I've got to figure out how to start mining, harvesting oxygen. Where did that plant go? Oh, it's right here. Ah, back way, back way, back way, back way. You definitely get more by sneaking up on it than you do otherwise. There's O2 over there. You can cook meat to replenish life support or use DH and carbon to make life support jelly. That's interesting. Oh, there's something down there. It's another language stone. Or that might be the monolith. What is that? Paraffinium? Blow up, do your thing. I was gonna say, I just saw it a minute ago. Where did it disappear to? There it is. It's gotta be it. It hasn't toggled it for me yet. There we go. Okay. Oh, it says want us restless sleep. What am I supposed to do with this? Okay. I don't know what to expect as I approach the structure. An army of sentinels, perhaps? Some gateway through which I'll find Artemis? But in the shifting structure of this monolith, I can feel something else. A story. A vision. It's already burning itself into my eyes. Can we get like a Mass Effect vision here? The end of the universe. The traveler has arrived. The traveler awoke beneath the shadow of a red star. Through the lonely cosmos they fled, yearning for the purpose and meaning. They found an anomaly, an aberration, a door to the heavens. No Gek, no Viking, nor Korvax could see it. Only the traveler could perceive the portal, although they did not know how to step through it. They did not know the secret language, the glyphs. They did not yet grasp the price of the final truth. Let's witness the glyphs. I'm filled with the knowledge of an ancient traveler. I see glyphs in my mind, part of the code I need to activate a portal. As I depart, I spot a sentinel drone in the distance. It moves away quickly. God, I suck at aiming. Low ammo. Reload, reload, reload. Why am I not reloading? Hang on. Why does it tell me? Hold that thought. I made ammo before I left. Now why is it telling me that I don't have any ammo? What the hell? I made ammo before I left. Where's it at? It's on the ship, son of a mother. Alright, do I have, I made it while I was in the ship, and therefore I accidentally put it in my ship inventory. Oh, and I don't have any ferrite dust. Surely I do in my refiner, right? Yes. Okay, hold that thought. Haha! User error. I put my ammo on the ship. Oh, Alright, where's that other one at? It says my quest wants me to do something. I'm not paying attention. Follow the energy trace. So I probably don't need to kill these now that I've like been shooting them down. God, I suck. What I wouldn't give for an aim assist. Yeah, we're just gonna go hide. Well, next time I make ammo, I need to remember that I need to put it in this inventory, not my ship inventory. Wait a second, it says detected. How am I detected? Alright, we're good. Off we go to the next ley line. Does this place have a landing platform? You blow up all you want. I'm gonna steal your gassy pods anyway. And then I'll blow you up because I forgot I didn't have it on the on the mining thing. What is that? Sweet root. This is like its own. How am I getting up there? Vegetation at Petuso Ezel Ancient Ruins. Okay. Ooh, some sort of geometrical device here. Palantir. It's like a weird humming going on underneath here. Gutia Rudisar. Hashilo Obligarion Migega. Imminent. As I approach the structure, I feel the same burning sensation in my eyes. There's nothing to read, and yet I am aware of these words, more aware of these words than anything I have ever known. The traveler's sin. The traveler found a way. They always did. The first drone screamed when it was cut open. Within the shattered memories of sentinels, the travelers found the glyphs they needed. They passed through the gateway, emerging before the face of omnipotence. The traveler asked the Atlas how many worlds were left to visit. They had seen so many in their life. They did not wish to die before they saw them all, and the Atlas answered. 18. Oh, wow, that's a big number. I can't even pronounce that number. I don't even know what that number means. That's a lot of planets, more than could ever be seen in a lifetime. It was impossible to explore the universe before the traveler died, so let's witness the glyphs. Another piece of code. I think of the Atlas. I've encountered the name many times in my travels, yet its true nature eludes me. Vision fills me with fear. Okay, we're going over in that direction. I've got a chunk of oxygen now. We should be okay. Quintillion is the number. Tim Horn says the video you released about Starfield earlier was pretty interesting. Even though I'm a big fan of No Man's Sky and supporter, I would be happy to play Starfield. Starfield has a lot of good things. If you can get past the vitriol that some people have for the game, because the biggest problem with Starfield was that way too many people read into it and made up their own version in their heads about what they thought the game was going to launch like. So I'm someone who, I like Bethesda as a company. They're not my favorite company in the world, but they make games that I enjoy. I had followed Starfield pretty pretty, I don't want to say religiously, but I had followed all of their development updates since they started. And at no point in time did I ever anticipate it was going to be anything more than a Bethesda RPG set in space, right? That's what I expected. That's what I got. I was given a Bethesda RPG in space, and I had a great time with it. At no point in time did I ever think that Bethesda was building Elite Dangerous, nor at any point in time did I think that Bethesda was building Star Citizen. Nor did I ever think, hey Chris, give me 2 seconds here, guys. Sorry, I had to put Frodo out, and I had to the doors open, so I had to check with Chris. So let me restart that conversation. I'm also going to timestamp this because this is a great conversation point. All right, so Tim Horn had said the video released about Starfield earlier was pretty interesting, even though I'm a big No Man's Sky fan and supporter. I would be happy to play Starfield also. And I think that that's a great attitude to have. I think games are meant to be played, games are meant to be enjoyed. What I was saying earlier before I had to step away for a minute was Bethesda makes Bethesda games. I knew going into it that I was going to get a Bethesda game in space. All of the material I followed, ever since the announcement of Starfield, years before the game was coming out, when they first announced it, I never understood it to be anything other than a Bethesda RPG set in space. It was going to have starships, it was going to have planets, but it was going to be a Bethesda RPG at its core. I knew that going into it, and therefore when the game came out and I was presented with a Bethesda RPG in space, I was intimately satisfied. What happened was a lot of people out there built up this own vision in their head of what they thought the game was going to be. And they read into all of these articles and these interviews. And in their minds, they created this illusion that Bethesda is building an Elite Dangerous in space, or they're building No Man's Sky in space. What's up, Paul Chris's Sweater? Thanks for the follow over on Twitch. Also, thanks, Ko Takashi on YouTube. Other people thought that they were building Star Citizen in, another version of Star Citizen. So all of these people built up these hyped up ideas in their head that Bethesda was building this game that was like their favorite space game, even though Bethesda never once said that they were making anything other than a Bethesda RPG in space. And you can talk to anybody out there who believes that Bethesda said something and didn't deliver, and they will point to an article or an interview or a YouTube documentary where Todd Howard said this or someone said this, and what you will always see is a distorted version of what was actually said. They said this, and then that person extrapolated information out of that statement and made it up in their head that it was going to be something other than what it was. And then when it launched, you had a bunch of people who jumped on this hate train about how Bethesda, as an example, Bethesda said they were building a space exploration game, and yet I can't take off from planets and I can't land on planets, but I can do that in No Man's Sky, and I can do that in Star Citizen, and I can do that in Elite Dangerous. Therefore, Starfield sucks because I can't manually land off and take off with my ship. Now, I don't personally care whether I can land or take off in my ship. I sometimes enjoy it, but I'll say right now, one of the things that I get tired of very quickly in No Man's Sky is the fact that I constantly have to be paying attention with my controller. I always have to be manually landing and taking off. I like cutscenes. I like landing sequences. I like all of that stuff. I like loading screens, all of those things. But people got it in their heads. And then what I've since seen through 2 playthroughs of Starfield is that a lot of players have absolutely refused to play Starfield. Not because they actually ever tried the game, but because some YouTuber somewhere said that the game sucks because it has loading screens, or because you can't manually take off with your ship, or you can't do this, or you can't do that, or they didn't do it as good as No Man's Sky, or they didn't do it as good as Elite Dangerous, or they didn't do it as good as Star Citizen's doing it. And it's unfortunate that people have that mentality because it's a mental block that keeps them from enjoying what is a really good game. Starfield is a really good game. It's a fun game that just does things differently than No Man's Sky. It does things differently than Elite Dangerous. It does things differently than what Star Citizen is doing. It does it differently than X, Y, or Z. And that's great because that's how we get different games doing things differently. I don't want Starfield to be like No Man's Sky. I don't want Starfield to be like EVE Online. If I want to play No Man's Sky, I come play No Man's Sky. If I want Elite Dangerous, I go play Elite Dangerous. If I want EVE Online, I go play EVE Online, right? Like, that's a good thing that games aren't carbon copies of each other and they don't do the same thing. So, Tim Horn, I would like to say thank you so much for being willing to try Starfield, because it is a good game and it's a fun game. And it's something where I think everybody can find enjoyment in it, as long as they understand what it is going in. If you understand that it's a Bethesda space RPG, then you're good to go. You're going to have a great time because you understand how Bethesda makes games. Bethesda makes games in a different way than Hello Games makes games. They make a different game than CCP or whatever the company is that makes EVE Online. Bubbleonia says, having never played Elite Dangerous or whatever, I was hoping for more choice and consequences and less linear storytelling. The early picks of the dialogue options encouraged me to think of that for sure. Well, see, that's the thing. The hype around dialogue choice, I've seen that complaint pop up for like every dialogue game that's ever been played. I think people see screenshots and they go, oh, and I'm going to be able to have these 50 different options off of this because they showed me this. And then you get in the game and it's like, oh, well, actually it's more like, a good example of this with Starfield was the it's not the bribing, the negotiation. Is it the negotiation one? But just overall, the being able to manipulate conversations, right? Those options, once you're actually in that mini game of trying to win a conversation with an NPC in Starfield, you start seeing the same lines of dialogue repeat, right? That felt limiting, and it does feel limiting. And if one were to take the early screenshots and descriptions of that system at literal face value, one could probably draw the hypotheses that it would be this hugely branching, deep choice and consequence type system. And then when we played it, it was like, oh, it's a very rudimentary system. And then you go back and read the initial coverage they did, and you realize that, oh, well, okay, they didn't say that it was going to be this deep, rich thing. We just all kind of assumed it was going to be because we've played BioWare games and Bethesda games and other games where it's been this rich, deep. Like a good example is like Pillars of Eternity. Deadfire is a great game in terms of branching dialogue that goes way deep. And they didn't do that with Starfield. And they have done that with other Bethesda games. So it's one of those weird scenarios, right? Where everything was there that they said was going to be there, but just how deep did we think it was going to go, or how much did we interpret what was going to be there? I think that's a lot of people's, like you said, it might not be exactly what you wanted or expected, but at least you accepted it for it is what it is. A lot of people won't accept things for what they are and instead want to go out there and rant and rave and say how Starfield's a horrible game, and and that's just, I mean, obviously everybody has the right to have an opinion about whether something is good or not, but those are very subjective points of view. It's not an objective thing where people could just say Starfield is bad. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's linear and cinematic. It's just, that's what it is. It's different. But it's always a good game to play. Especially if you want, because you could jump in and play main storyline. It's like, what, 25, 30 hours? And then if you want to go hog wild, you can get hundreds of hours of entertainment if you want to play all of the different faction storylines and get into like the spaceship building, everything else. Like I just finished up the shipbuilding video today, which is coming out tomorrow, and I haven't even started outpost building. I've done 2 playthroughs of the story, and I've never done outpost building in Starfield, and that's something that I'm looking forward to getting into now that I'm getting into it with No Man's Sky, because it's also a great conversation point of pointing out the similarities and differences between the 2 games for a conversation point of how outpost building, what works, what doesn't work in one game versus another game. Just on the other side of this ridge. Oh, is this one? No landing platform on this one. There was also the hate too about, from the PlayStation crowd of there's the traditional like people who want to rant and rave because something's an exclusive on one platform or another. So Beefy Nacho says, am I going to do a playthrough of the Star Wars Bounty Hunter remaster? I mean, I kind of wanted to on a personal level, but there doesn't seem to be enough of an interest for it on the channel for me to justify it. There's only a handful of people that appeared to want me to do that, so I don't think I'm going to do it. The Atlas told the traveler they were the first of their kind, that a multitude would follow. Excuse me. Each would be endowed with the same noble soul, each able to travel from planet to planet in eternal solitude. The first traveler rejected the gift of the Atlas. This was not what they hoped for. What was the purpose of infinity if you could not see it all, if you were alone, if you would one day die? The first traveler cursed the Atlas and claimed it would find a way to survive, no matter the cost. All of these worlds, all of time itself, it will be for the travelers to witness. The final portion of the code. Locate and activate a portal. So I've discovered the ley lines, and I'm assuming they point to something now. This reminds me of Mass Effect Andromeda, where you had to find you had to go to the 3 portals to raise them up and kill the bad guys around them and solve the puzzles, and then it would point to the central chamber that you were looking for on every planet. Another great example of what we were just talking about was when Star Wars Outlaws was first announced. They talked about how it's going to be this open RPG. You can land and take off with your ship and everything else, and people hyped it up. It was going to be literally what people were saying. It's going to be No Man's Sky with only it's Star Wars. It's going to be like this, that, or the other. Then when they saw the first footage, they went, oh, there's a landing sequence which has a loading screen where you're going through the clouds. You're going down to the planet, you're coming out of the planet, you're in the clouds, and during that cloud sequence, they're unloading the assets from behind you, loading the assets in front of you. They're taking your ship from this space and they're putting it into the planet at the landing station, and once you're through the clouds, you get a landing sequence showing your ship docking. And then when you take off, it's the same thing. And people immediately started ranting about how it was bullshit, that Ubisoft lied, that Ubisoft had promised they were going to have this open world system where they were going to be able to fully control everything. And I was like, where did you ever read that they told you that you were going to be able to manually land and take off your ship in any of the Star Wars Outlaws preview interviews or anything. People chose to think that that's the way the system was going to work. And then when they finally saw footage, they were like, Ubisoft lied. No, they didn't. You just built it up in your head that it was going to be something other than it was. And like the footage that's going around on TikTok right now it's just getting slammed on TikTok by people who are in the comments bitching and moaning that they're not going to be able to manually take off their ship. And then at the same time, you've got people who are in the comments like saying, hang on a second, I thought this was going to be, but wait a minute, this is just like Starfield. This is exactly the way Starfield did it. And I'm like, that's the same way most games do it. Most games, this one's a little different because it's dealing with procedural assets that aren't high fidelity assets. When you're dealing with high end assets and high end graphics, there has to be loading and unloading that happens through the sequences, landing sequences and loading sequences, because it's just the way it works. Modern hardware can't handle it. It's a very interesting psychological thing to watch the way people get upset about what they have in their mind versus what's actually being talked about in an article. Um, and then when they see footage, they're like, wait a second, that's not what you said.